We're now in a very good position for our shareholders. There's a clear line of sight for the obtaining of the sale, and then moving through the development process, getting next year our offtake agreements and strategic partners and financing in place, ready to go into construction and aiming to be in production by the end of 2027.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Cleantech Lithium Executive Chairman, Dr. Steve Kesler. Steve, very good to speak with you. And you're ending the week on a high note. You've had positive news from the Chilean government, with Laguna Verde being prioritized under the special lithium operating contract process. What does this mean for the company?
Hi, Stephen. Yeah, no, it's very important. We've been talking to our investors and potential investors for a long time now. Saying that we are very well established in Chile. We're the most advanced company. We've got a very exciting project at Laguna Verde. We have strong community support, and we are the best placed to be head of the queue to get one of these sales, the special operating contract. But you know what it's like until you've got it or are in process, there's still a bit of nervousness about what is the process, are we going to get it or not? And today we could announce that there's a very clear line of sight to getting the operating contract. We filed our expressions of interest back in April. The government announced the results of their process and had sort of 88 applications for the development of 16 salars. And yesterday they had the announcement that, having reviewed all of that, they've selected 6 projects which they regard as the most favorable conditions to be developed, and one of those is Laguna Verde. And they've announced the process, and the process is now to formally file the application for the sale by the end of the year. And in Chile, it's a legal requirement for there to be a tender process. So it's open. Others apart from ourselves can apply. But the government have put in place a number of criteria which must be there in order to qualify for the allocation of the sale. And one is the party must be a participant in the lithium industry, and we clearly are, being an explorer and developer in the lithium industry. The company must demonstrate the financial capacity to develop the project, and we demonstrated that in the RFI. And probably the most important is that the company must demonstrate that it holds 80% at least of the mining licenses in the sale area in which it's applying for. And that's what we made clear to everybody very early on, that we went out of our way to make sure that we have the mining licenses at Laguna Verde. So that it's only Cleantech Lithium that can comply with that condition, that we can demonstrate we have the mining licenses. Nobody else can do that. So really the only company that can possibly be awarded a sale at Laguna Verde is Cleantech Lithium. And the government is very interesting. There was five ministers standing together yesterday. The Minister of Mines, Minister of Finance, of Economy, all saying the same thing. The government wants to increase lithium production in Chile. It wants to see 3 or 4 new projects in development in 2026. It expects Chile to increase its lithium production by 70% by 2030. And it's really looking to the private sector, and in particular, these first 6 projects to lead the charge in bringing new lithium production into Chile. And in the process, they expect to have this streamlined. For these 6 projects, they start off with a process of community dialogue. Again, we are different to the other 5 prioritized projects that we've been exploring and developing for a couple of years now, and have been in dialogue with the indigenous communities. Again, we have nobody living within 100 kilometers, but there are communities on transport corridors, and they have a historical tie to the land. So we've involved them in what we're doing, the drilling programs, the pilot plant work. We signed a formal alliance agreement at the end of last year to include the communities in the drafting of the EIA and participating in some of the work of that. We volunteered that when we get to signing the contract with the government, we will provide a 1.5% royalty to a trust fund to the indigenous communities to be used for educational, wealth, health, and social projects. So it's going to be a win-win situation for the communities and ourselves. The governor said there'll be a period of dialogue if it's necessary. And in our case, we expect that to be truncated because the communities have been very vocal in standing up in public in Chile and saying, look, this is the way. We know that every project has an environmental impact, but the way that Cleantech Lithium is going to be developing this project using DLE and reinjection of the brine so that there's no water consumption from the aquifer, this is the way to go. And there's going to be the minimum impact possible. So they stand up and say to government, we totally support Cleantech Lithium. So there's already that out in the public domain. So we think that process is going to go quickly. We'll submit our application, and then the government wants to very quickly finalize the contract terms. Once it's all agreed, get it signed, decree is there, and off we go. But one of the key things which has happened over the course of the last months in Chile, that there was a lot of concern with the government awarding these sales to parties on saline systems where other parties might have the mining rights. And now the governor's clarified that and saying it's going to be essential to get the sale, you must at least have 80% of that area having mining rights. So that prevents the friction and the potential litigation. So I think we're now in a very good position for our shareholders. There's a clear line of sight for the obtaining of the sale. And then moving through the development process, getting next year offtake agreements and strategic partners and financing in place, ready to go into construction and aiming to be in production by the end of 2027. So I think now there's great clarity. I think for our investors, it's a good opportunity. I think one of these issues has now been cleared off the table. People have seen the lithium market has not gone through a good spell recently, but since there's been production taken off the market in Australia and China, there's been an uptick in share prices in Australia. There's the feeling that we've hit the bottom of the lithium market, and the only way is up in terms of the lithium price into the future. And clearly we have a fast-track route now to get ourselves into production in Chile, and probably will be the first private sector company in production in Chile.
Well, Steve, I hope you'll keep us abreast of any other developments. Thank you very much for the update today.
That's a pleasure, Stephen. Always nice talking to you.
And to you, Cleantech Lithium Executive Chairman, Dr. Steve Kesler.